Moon Palace, Chapter 9. Once, there was a bunch of rowdy teenage boys who dined at the restaurant and ran out without paying. Then, the next day, they crank call with weird voices and laughter. At least, Mei-ling suspects it was them. But that was a few years ago. These boys were probably adults by now. It would be unlikely that they were the perpetrator of the recent crank calls Mei-ling has been getting for the last few days. At first, Mei-ling didn't think much of it, but by the end of the week, it was all she thought about. The calls occurred 2 to 3 times a day, before the place was open, during the staff's lunch, and right after the place was closed. It was as though the caller knew when to reach someone at work. After a couple of days, Mei-ling brought this problem to the staff's attention. "Does anybody know somebody who would crank call the restaurant?" No one replied. "Why would anybody crank call?" said Pang to Shuming as they're doing some cleanup after lunch. "I can't recall anyone that had been unpleasant other than the ones that complaining that the food took too long to reach their table or it was not hot or spicy enough. Those were not good enough reason to cause trouble," Pang said. Besides, the incidents had happened a few months ago. If any of them wanted to retaliate, they would have done it by then. But for Shuming, her thoughts were different. Not because of bad experiences with customers, but because of someone she knew personally. Her ex-boyfriend, whom she broke up with 2 months ago. Ever since they separated, Shuming's ex-boyfriend has been leaving messages on her voicemail every day. At first, she listened to his messages and called him back, but each time the conversation would lead to an argument. Shuming finally ignored him and was glad that he stopped calling a couple of weeks later. But now she wondered if the calls were from him. If it really was him, what would he do next? Come to the restaurant to make a scene? Shuming shook her head in silence. Towards the end of the week, Mei-ling was fed up. When she got another one of those calls, she dialed *69 right after it hung up to find out where the call came from. But unfortunately, whoever made the call knew how to prevent being identified. The automated operator informed her that the number was blocked. Finally, by Sunday evening, around 8 o'clock, Mei-ling answered a call. It was the anonymous call again. At first, it was a long silence, but then a voice of a female stuttering. Hello? I'm looking for Yuan Li, please." Mei-ling was startled. First, someone finally spoke, and second, it sounded like a young female, and she was asking for a husband. Mei-ling replied, "He's not here," and asked, "Who's calling?" My name is Moy." The woman sounded sheepishly nervous. Could you tell him that I called?" "Who is she? What does she want with Yuan?" Mei-ling's voice stiffened, as if a pebble was in her throat. "Can you tell me what this is about?" I, she stuttered heavily. He knows." He knew what? Mei-ling thought. This exchange was getting irritating by the second. But Mei-ling remained calm, even though deep down she wanted to scream at this woman, who, for the past few days, might have been the one that disrupted her. She tried to keep her voice monotone and detached. "Do you want to leave your number so he can call you back?" Mei-ling's heart began to pound. The woman hesitated again, and this time she spoke in haste. "He knows my number," and hung up. As if thousands of needles pricking her face, and her body stiffened. What was happening? Is Ren having an affair with this woman? How is that possible? She wished Ren was here to justify himself. Mei-ling's head was spinning. "Calm down," she told herself. "There are customers around." Mei-ling went to the waitress station to get a drink of water, while Pang with her keen eyes, observed Mei Ling's paled face. Pang asked, "Mei Ling, are you all right?" Mei Ling nodded. "I'm fine, just a bit thirsty." "Who was that on the phone?" "Wrong number," said Mei Ling, and went to the restroom. Later in the evening, during dinner, Mei Ling was quieter than usual. She was confounded by the mystery woman's call and was unknowingly stirring her rice in her bowl over and over without eating. Weilong noticed it as he glanced at her every so often. Shumi noticed her too, and she also noticed Weilong glance at Mei Ling and wonder why he paid so much attention to her. It bothered her, and while still chewing her food, Shumi blurted, "Hey guys, I want to invite you all to my birthday party tomorrow." Everyone heard her except Mei Ling. They paused for a moment to sink in what Shumi just said. Then Lao Tang asked, "Isn't that kind of a short notice?" Shumi glared at him. "I don't think so," and looked at the rest of her co-workers, who remained silent. Feeling herself dangling, she turned to the last possible person that might say yes. "Mei Ling, would you like to come to my birthday party?" Mei Ling didn't respond. "Mei Ling!" Still no response. Shuming reached over the table and tapped her on the shoulder. Mei Ling looked at Shuming, startled. "Yes? Would you like to come to my birthday party?" It took a few seconds before she responded. "When?" "Tomorrow," Shuming replied, and eagerly added, "Monday. The party is going to be at my cousin's karaoke bar in Chinatown." "I have to be with my kids," Pang interjected. Shuming pouted at Pang and turned to Weilong. "How about you, Weilong? Will you come?" Weilong shrugged and quietly said, "Maybe." He glanced at Mei Ling again and then shoveled rice in his mouth. Seeing the desperate way that Shuming was looking at Weilong, Mei Ling felt her intention. She thought for a moment and nodded and said, "Sure, I will come." Shuming cheered and turned to Jose, who reminded her about the faded bruises on her elbow, but was too happy to hold a grudge against him. She asked, "What about you, Jose? Bring your wife?" Jose smiled and shook his head. "Sorry, señorita, I got kids too." For the rest of the evening, until closing, Mei Ling could not focus. She made several mistakes, one of which she gave a takeout to the wrong customer. "I'm so sorry," said Mei Ling to the irritated customer who returned the wrong order. "We got too busy and I must have misplaced the ticket." Despite Mei Ling's apology, the customer hissed, "I had to drive 5 miles to bring it back." Mei Ling's eyes widened and nervously apologized again. "I'm really sorry," and handed him his order and gave him 20% cash back. The man looked unmoved as he took the cash and left without a word. Mei Ling continued to make more mistakes as the evening passed. Unintentionally, of course, and if it was not for the staff, she would have closed the business as soon as the bomb was dropped. She was constantly looking at the clock and counting the hours until closing. She tried to recall if Yuan ever mentioned someone named Moy. She desperately wanted to talk to him and wished that he would call. And as if God answered her prayer, right after everyone left the restaurant, Yuan did call. He asked, "How's business today?" "It's fine. Busy as usual for Sunday," Mei Ling answered, and asked as calmly as she could, "How's your mother?" "She's all right now. We are staying at her sister's house." Mei Ling bit her lips, something she did whenever she's in a panic mode. "Do you have a number where I can reach you?" "No, sorry. I don't know the number yet. My aunt just went out shopping. When she gets back, I will ask her." Mei Ling paused for a few seconds and said, "There was a phone call for you." Oh, who was it? She said her name is Moy, and she wanted you to call her back. She said you know her number. The silence on the other line stretched long enough to make her more suspicious, and as each second passed, Mayling's heart began to sink. Until now, she could never believe that her husband would do anything to hurt her and their marriage. Her head began to spin as she asked coldly, "Who is she, Yuan?" "I don't know," Yuan replied innocently. "It's probably one of those creditors who wants to get paid." "Yuan, I checked my books. We don't owe anybody at this time." Yuan was silent again. Mei-ling inhaled deeply and demanded, "Yuan, tell me who it is." "Mei-ling, Yuan sounded as if he was about to confess, but stopped, and moments later, as if the previous conversation never took place, Yuan, with a distant voice, firmly continued, "Listen, I have to go. My mother is coming. She's still not feeling well. I will talk to you later." "Yuan, don't hang—" The line went dead. Mei-ling's hand was shaken as she grabbed the receiver even tighter and slammed it back on the phone. Taunted by the same traumatic feeling she had earlier, Mei-ling was in disbelief. The man she married for the past 13 years has apparently betrayed her. How long has it been? Why did it happen? "Are you sure he never mentioned her?" Louisa asked over the phone. It was 3 a.m, and Mei-ling could not sleep. She needed to tell her friend what happened. But before she reached Louisa, Mei-ling was at home searching for Yuan's things. She searched inside Yuan's car, but found nothing suspicious. Then she went through his drawers, his closet. Again, nothing. "Yes, I'm pretty sure," Mei-ling replied. "The only people or friends he ever mentioned were men." "Where do you think he met this woman?" asked Louisa. "I really don't know. I'm really surprised that he even had the time to meet anybody. He is at work all the time, except—" Mei-ling stopped. "Except what?" "Except when he goes to buy stuff for the restaurant." "When does he do that?" "Depends. In the morning, before work, during work hours like in the middle of the afternoon." "And those are the only times that he is away from you?" "Yes, well, what? Occasionally he would go play mahjong with Lao Tang and his friends." "When?" "After work." "When does he come home?" "Sometimes 3 a.m, sometimes 6. Louisa paused and said, "Don't you think those are the likely time frame that he would see her?" Millie took a deep breath and said, "If that is the case, then Lao Tang must know." He doesn't have to know where he was in order to cover him." "Perhaps. And if he does know, he wouldn't tell me. He's loyal to Yuan." "Then the only explanation is to go to the places that he's been and find her." "I just realized something." "What's that?" "The other day, I went to a produce warehouse. A woman was staring at me. I turned to her and she went away." "It's got to be her," Louisa exclaimed. "Did you get a good look at her?" "Not really, except she had long hair and was shorter than me." "Was she attractive? How old did she look?" "Young, I think. Maybe in her 20s. I didn't get a chance to take a good look at her. She moved away really quick." "Was she pushing a shopping cart?" "No, I don't think she was even carrying a purse. She just stood there empty-handed." "If I were you, I would go back to the warehouse and see if you can find her. For your sake, let's just hope she's not who you think she is."